This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so quick brief about me. I have a total of 16 years of experience and have worked with various multinationals, starting with Genpact. Then I moved to IBM. I had a stint with Capgemini, then with Jana Small Finance Bank, and now for the last year and a half, I've been with Wipro. So it's been an interesting 16 years, and most of the time, this has been around interacting, engaging with colleges, working with students, getting senior leadership hires, and all of that around technology areas. And that's what kind of helps me understand the technology landscape, and also kind of enables me to talk to you guys and perhaps give you my bits on what works in the world of corporate. Sure, you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn. I jokingly say that I kind of live on LinkedIn. So anytime you have any questions which you think you could not answer because of paucity of time, please feel free to ping me on LinkedIn and ask your question. I'll be more than happy to kind of respond to you over there. Okay. Okay. This is not a political slide, not a religious slide as well. Just something that I saw some days back, and I felt this is very, very pertinent to the topic that we want to talk about. Uh, I wish I could have engaged with you, interacted with you, and asked you questions, because that would have been in a normal setting. Obviously, interactions are much different. The fact that all of you are on a virtual setup can be a little different. So, so what you see right here, Vishnu
Students, you
is
can
the
unmute
sustainer.
yourself. Unmute yourself and you can answer to sir.
Sure, was there something? Hello.
Yes, sir, you can continue, sir.
Okay, great. So, so Brahma is the creator, as I said. Vishnu is the sustainer, and Mahesh, as we all know, Shiva is the destroyer. Why am I talking about the Trinity in this concept? And again, if we were to, let's say, extrapolate this into the real world corporate scenario, Brahma will then get translated into the CEO, the guy who thinks, the guy who creates, the guy who thinks of an idea and ends up creating an organization which he or she wants to pursue with. Uh, Vishnu is are the set of people like us, people who work for the organizations, who work for the CEO, who lives their dreams and kind of works hard to sustain that dream or vision that the organization has. So we sustain every organization that the CEOs create. And then there is a destroyer of the Shiva. So destroyers are nothing but people like you, people who are millennials, people who think that a 9 to 5 job perhaps is no longer uh, acceptable. Jobs should be done from anywhere, everywhere, and whenever I want to. And people who feel that, you know what, disruption is the way to go. And I don't disagree with you. Disruption is indeed the way to go. These 5 6 years and then come out and create a startup of their own. So these are disruptors, and disruptors are the people who are actually making the change in the way we look at the technology landscape and also in the people landscape. So how have things changed in the last decade or decade and a half? So when at least I started my career, innovation was one aspect that everybody spoke about. Innovation was the key word. Anybody who wrote innovation in their resumes were sought after, right? What is innovation? Doing the same things a bit better. So whatever somebody has done in the past, can I do it a little better? I am innovating something and I become a great performer, right? What has changed in the last decade or so is that innovation has given way to disruption. So now innovating in itself is not good enough. What's important is, how do I disrupt a particular business? How do I look at changing the whole gamut? If I so all of you would have definitely heard of the old adage called think outside the box, right? The new phenomenon is, why do I need to think outside the box? Why can I just turn, twist the box, change the shape of the box? And why box? Why not a cylinder? Why not something else? So the whole disruption idea is to change things completely, remove the obsolete portions of the work, and look at it from your perspective. I'll just take a quick glance at some of the disruptive technologies that have erupted in our lives in the past few years, and all of you can very clearly relate to it. We sleep, wake up, work, go to sleep, and every time there are technology disruptions that are around us, and sometimes we just don't realize. Example, Uber. What is so special about Uber? Right? Uber happens to be the world's largest taxi owner, largest taxi company, but has no taxis. So what does it do? It has only started a disruptive idea of providing the transportation part. Society One, I don't know how many of you would have heard of this bank. This is a bank in the APAC region, Australia, and this is one of the fastest growing bank. And you won't believe if I tell you that this bank does not accept deposits. So the bank balance for this bank is zero. And obviously there could be questions which I would expect in the later half of the session is how can a bank work without having actual money? But as I said, it happens to be one of the fastest growing bank, and it. Airbnb. I mean, Airbnb is a classic case of somebody stealing the idea from Indians. We've been talking about Atithi Devo Bhava for hundreds and hundreds of years. We've been inviting our guests, our relatives, and everybody, which we call Atithi in India, in Hindi, to our homes. The only difference is now people have started charging money for it, and that's what the Airbnb plan is. You open your homes to somebody which is not used, and you charge money from them. That's the whole concept of Airbnb, and it is the largest accommodation provider with no real estate. Next one is Netflix. All of us are pretty aware of what Netflix does to us. Without Netflix, at least I would be dead. And the whole concept of Netflix again is around having the largest movie house without owning a single cinema theater of their own. Next in line is Skype. A lot of us have used Skype and we continue using Skype. What most of us do not know is that this organization is the largest company but has nothing in terms of a infrastructure or a telecommunications platform. Alibaba, the world's biggest retailer, which has not a single inventory. So they work on just-in-time delivery concept. There are tons and tons of orders that are delivered at every single minute that we speak about, and not a single inventory. They don't believe in the concept of go downs. They don't believe in the concept of keeping stuffs in their go down because that is a waste of time, space, and money. Who doesn't know Facebook, right? How Facebook has transformed our lives, and how people, so people who did not see Facebook, let's say 15 years ago, and all of them are there in the Facebook as well. What we don't know is that so many content, so many new things that we see on Facebook are actually outsourced from third parties. So you must have seen one day you get up and you see, you know what, you spent 15 years with a friend of yours. Let me show you the video of how the time has gone in the last 15 years. And we go, wow. But to be honest, Facebook again is not creating their own content. They have outsourced this whole piece. And what they do is providing an idea, providing a platform which allows us to engage and thereby disrupt the whole social media platform. Last but not the least, I mean, you cannot have a slide on disruption without having what has happened with Apple is that they have continued creating a niche market of their own, and that is thanks to the technology that they use, thanks to the designs that they have, and thanks to the market that they have created for themselves. Right. Moving on. This is an interesting slide that I bumped into, and I kind of have been using it for the last 4 or 5 years every time I do a talk on technology. And when you Google a similar thing, which is what happens in Internet Minute, you will be able to see a similar snapshot from, let's say, last 5 years. And if you compare those side by side, you will realize how technology is taking over our lives in a fashion that we don't even realize. I mean, some of the numbers, if you go through it, are simply mind-boggling. Something that you and I perhaps don't even imagine. Something that we and I never had imagined in the past. But this is what's happening in the real world in 60 seconds. I mean, imagine 2.5 million snaps created in 60 seconds. Imagine 4.1 million search queries in Google, or 1.3 million people logging in on Facebook only in 16 seconds, and that's the average. And that kind of clearly calls out how disruptive technologies have become, and how have they, in more ways than one, taken over our lives and our imagination. Okay. Uh, see, so CEOs, for example, all the CMOs, CEOs, people in the uh, board have been talking about disruption, have been talking about digitalization, have been talking about transformation, and all of that for quite long. I mean, everybody spoke about transforming by 2025, transforming by 2030. We are 5 years away, and this is what exactly what you see. All the CEOs have been saying that transformation will happen, but will take some time. And then uh, there had to be a COVID pandemic, which forced us to start thinking differently. And in some ways or the other, COVID actually has resulted in transforming the business area by at least 5 years. I mean, I've heard several leaders talking about how things have changed, how COVID, while obviously it's a pandemic, it's something that never should happen in the history of mankind and whatnot. But if there is a silver line to it, I think this is it. 2025. So every organization, and most of the organizations who have kind of succeeded during this time, are the ones who have learned how to adapt, who've learned how to use this transformation as a as a as a as a enabler to move disruptive technologies. And what's happened is people have started looking at technology or spending at digitalization much ahead in advance, and people have started looking at that very, very seriously. So it's a forced transformation, but over a point in time we'll soon realize that it was something which was needed. And hopefully we are in a much, much better place for anything like this that will happen in the future, right? So so how do I look at this pandemic? Or I would see that there are four phases, and I'm talking from a perspective of let's say an organization or an economy. So one, in March, when the pandemic hit us, or when we started, at least in India perspective, when we started realizing that, you know what, there is something big, and we need to react. We need to start thinking, how does work happen for me tomorrow? And it's not just work, it's at life as well. Do I go to college tomorrow? Do I go to school tomorrow? Do I open up my kirana store tomorrow? I am supposed to be traveling for my friend's marriage. Can I travel? So all of us went into a panic mode. We realized that it is not something which was just a hearsay. It is right there and out there, and something that you need to be wary of. So people took time to react, and that for me was phase one. Phase two was nothing but to try and see how can we respond to it. Obviously, every problem that comes, right? Humankind have been out there to try and respond to every challenges that we've been faced with, and there have been plenty. I mean, I agree that uh, nobody in the history of mankind has seen what we are going through today, and hopefully uh, none of us will be hopefully will be seeing anything like this ever in the future. But this also has allowed us the opportunity to try and respond to various things. And how have we responded? Colleges have responded by going online. I mean, right now what we do is a virtual session, which uh, forget 5 years, even last year, none of us would have thought of. I mean, I, at least 4 months ago, if you'd asked me that you will be asked to take a session with 80 or 100 students out there who you can't see, they only can see you, I am talking to a blank screen, I would say, you know what, it's nuts, and it's just not possible. Imagine college saying that, you know what, you don't have to come to college, but we'll continue imparting education. We'll do it online. It would have been a joke, and everybody would have said, you know what, this is just not possible, can't happen. Imagine people selling stuff without opening their stores. Again, another thing that you said, yeah, some bit of retail works, Amazon, Flipkart, all those are good, but can we sell everything in terms of, let's say, a vegetables or a small packet of goods which are essentials? The answer is yes, things have changed. So so it allowed us the time to respond in a fashion that we have never done. And if anything like this has to come in the future, will we be much more prepared? The answer is definitely yes. The third was return. So now that we did spend 4 to 5 months in trying to respond, in trying to see how can we change the whole gamut of things, how can we respond to a situation which has handicapped us to a large extent. The plan for organizations, for schools, for colleges, for economy, for business, for government, everything was to have a formal plan of action in terms of returning back to normalcy. Returning back to normalcy, obviously, in different states have been called as phase one, phase two, unlock, and whatnot. And every government is try and work with this new normal. Right? So that's the return phase. And the final phase is transform. Transformation is nothing but being ready for challenges that can happen in the future. So colleges for now are obviously prepared. If anything like this has to happen in future, let's say 10, 12 years down the line, we would have by now prepared tons of technologies to be able to impart education without being able to see each other in physical presence. Right? Organizations, for example, have already started working with various clients, and everybody's agreed to it. I mean, if you look at the IT sector, for example, and you call it the Wipros, the TCSs, the Infosys of the world, we are still operating in the last 5 months with 5% of our population going to office. So 95% of us continue to be at home from the last 6 months, and it looks like that it's going to be another 3 to 6 months, and we don't know how long. Has the business dropped? The answer is no. In fact, in a lot of pockets, a lot of leaders have in fact also gone back and stated that businesses have picked up, the productivity has picked up. What's that we've gone through, we don't know when to start, when to stop. Is it important for me to connect with people, meet with people, for ideas to come in, for the culture of an organization to build in? The answer is definitely yes. But going through what we are going right now, I think this is the best way we transform ourselves and be ready for something that can happen sometime in the future. So that's the 4 phases of the pandemic, in my opinion. Okay, so before I kind of move on to the next slide, I would take a pause and maybe take some questions if there are any.
No, sir. I think you can continue, sir.
Okay, great, thanks. So there are 5 trends, according to me, that are changing the future of work, and that becomes important for you guys, because let's say a year, couple of years down the line, you're going to step into the arena which is called corporate, and you need to be prepared for what has or how has the whole corporate sector changed. So in my opinion, I think one is going to be globalization. Right, we've heard of globalization in a lot of our textbooks. Globalization, in at least in my young days, was about thinking global, and having a larger picture. So that globalization terminology has now changed to globalization, which means I don't really need, and I don't really need to be at the corporate or the client's. Globalization was all about me traveling, meeting the client, understanding the culture, understanding the concept, what you have to deliver, and then finally working out and trying to think how can we partner with them. Localization, on the other hand, is about staying local and thinking global, which means, can I sit here in Bangalore and continue to work with, let's say, somebody in APAC or somebody in the US or somebody in Europe? The answer is yes. All it takes is for us to connect. Again, the parameters or the boundaries of work continue to be the same. So you connect, you understand the culture, you understand the requirement, and you start delivering in the way the client is expecting. It's about more of staying local and thinking global. The other thing, and I did briefly touched upon it, was the whole aspect of how the Gen Z and you guys are going to change the way corporations have been hiring. So millennials, and I've come across a lot of them. I've had pretty blunt answers from a lot of students during interviews that, you know what, I don't like the whole concept of 9 to 5. I don't like the concept of going to be dressed formally and going to office. I don't like the whole concept of having a supervisor who is monitoring me all the time. I'm not in school. I don't need a class teacher to monitor me all the time. And that's to a large extent wasn't acceptable in earlier years. But if I were to look at current scheme of things, I think this is one area which all the corporates are trying to adapt to, right? And startups, for example, give you a lot of room and scope to think and behave in the fashion that you want to. And with the changing demographics, the fact that there are a lot of young people into the scene of employment, I think the organizations will have to change their ways of looking at it. They'll have to change from being, let's say, managers to being enablers, to be able to see the output and not really focus on what's happening, how many hours am I putting in, uh, what is the way I'm kind of closing on things and all of that. So I think it's more outcome based work that we're going to see in times to come. The third aspect is again going to be mobility, and this is again, do I need to go to office really? And when I said that COVID is a forced transformation, I think it has made us realize that it perhaps is not really necessary for all of us to go to office at all times. Is it important for us to connect? Is it important for us to, let's say, meet up face to face and build that culture that we all speak about? The answer is a definite yes. But is it okay if I were to, let's say, have a hybrid model wherein 50% of people go to work on some days and the other days the other 50% go? Can I that way is one create a safe environment as long as COVID vaccine is not created? The answer is yes. Can we also try and save infrastructure costs and also allow people like us to be able to balance out family and personal life? The answer is yes. So what's going to change is where do I work from? And a lot of organizations will work towards this aspect of transformation, and then accordingly things will move around. The fourth aspect is again the new behavior, and behavior is again the same fashion of what I feel is work, what I feel is workplace, how do I want to do my work. And with new behaviors coming in, uh, gig working, for example, has been spoken about for about 5 to 6 years in the recent past. And now if you were to look at it, gig has actually become extremely important. Part-time jobs, a lot of organizations are not very, or at least were not very keen with. That's another trend that's going to come up big time. Work from home jobs, I have seen lots of advertisements after COVID, wherein which something again was a very big surprise for me. I have never seen people advertising for work from home. You generally advertise to, let's say, work for a particular organization, and they say, you know what, this is the place where the office is. You have to commute for an hour to come to office and then go back and all of that. uh, uh, a mother, for example, a working mother would think 10 times before taking a job, and we've seen classic examples of many of them choosing personal life over professional career, and they take a break of 3 to 4 years. But this new concept will now allow them to continue managing both professional and personal life, and that's going to be brilliant. So a lot of new behaviors will change the way we worked. You will have an influx of gig workers, and gig workers mean uh, freelancers, people who don't want to be with an organization, don't want to be in anybody's payroll, but want to do jobs as and when they feel like. When they think that they need to be intellectually occupied and they need some money, they will get some freelancing work from an organization, do it, or maybe work with 3 or 4 organizations at the similar time, doing project works and getting paid for that. The last is going to be technology shift, and there is another slide which I'm going to talk about, so I won't spend much time here on how would AI, big data, cloud computing, and all of those are technologies of the future, and something that we cannot shy away from. Okay. I just thought I saw this a couple of days back, and I thought it was important because most of us at least aspire to be continuing to stay in the Indian economy and prosper here. Some of you obviously will have plans to go outside of India and build a career there. But for those who are looking at India as a potential market as far as the transformation is concerned, as far as the technological transformation is concerned, and trust you me, if you look at the numbers, it's come to the extent that we are second to none in terms of the transformation that's happened in the number of internet users or the number of subscribers in mobile, number of smartphone shipments that have happened in India, the whole impetus that the current government is pushing to digital India, pushing to made in India, and all those aspects very clearly call out the need for us to transform. And only when our local producers or local manufacturers transform the way we look at a digital India is when things will work out. And there are classic examples everywhere you see, and Bangalore happens to be the place when you talk about disruptive technologies, when you talk about uh, the startups, and every other household that we go by has a startup or has a person who owns a startup, and that's brilliant because that's the way the future is going to shape. So moving on, and I think this is something that you should be very very excuse me, interested in, which is the skills of the future. So while there's a lot of things that are said in terms of how are things going to change, how is the future going to pan out, what's also important is uh, as a technical student, what are the different skills that I should pick up which are going to be in demand for me in the future? And some of them, according to me, and which are again not something that I have prepared, these are basis various studies done by various folks and out there on the web for all of you to see. There is nothing that can happen without artificial intelligence. I mean, humankind has been talking about AI for a long, long time. We've been scared to a large extent of uh, acknowledging or accepting AI because we feel or we fear AI taking over our jobs, right? It's always been the hated word because we always feel that, you know what, I don't want a robo to take over my job and let's say giving lectures to various college students, right? But if you really really deeply look into artificial intelligence, you'll realize that while it indeed will take away jobs that are transactional in nature, jobs that are repetitive, jobs that are perhaps not requiring human intervention, it will also open up avenues to do and complement the technology from a larger perspective. AI cannot function itself. AI needs people to guide them to write those codes and whatnot. So it will definitely open up. And I think what we need to do is not fear AI, but try and complement AI to be able to work with it and try and see how can I build a future around it. The next thing that is going to be extremely critical is machine learning. Obviously, AI ML is critical from a perspective of what are the technologies that are going to prosper in the future. Machine learning is nothing but you guys would obviously know more, is the cognitive ability of machines to learn, understand, interpret, and then continue evolving over a point in time. Blockchain, with all of us working from home, it becomes difficult for clients to be able to be okay with the aspect of security because again there is a lot of confidential data, confidential information which is passed on, and that's when cyber security, which is again another skill that's going to be very critical, blockchain becomes extremely important because again here your data is completely secure and something that can never be erased out of the system. We are in AR. I mean, this is one area which bamboozles me every time I read about it, I think about it. Virtual reality is a thing of the past. I was, in fact, uh, reading an article a month ago, and it actually called out that very soon we all talk about having birthday parties. We talk about, let's say, having team celebrations and whatnot. I mean, if not earlier, at least in the couple of years or 3 years or 5 years down the line, we will very soon start having colleges or organizations having parties on a virtual reality mode. I mean, while it is funny to think, or imagine all of us sitting at Ibiza right now and partying there, but physically being present in India. So and that is not far away. So the whole virtual reality in terms of at least the gaming industry has picked up big time. And thanks to COVID, we've had some spare time in our hands. So all of us have got hooked on to various technologies using VR and AR, and I know for a matter of fact that how things have shaped up. So AR is nothing but augmented reality, and VR is virtual reality. So this is again another thing that will change the whole way of landscape, and somebody who aspires to do more should definitely take up this skill and perhaps learn a lot more in that, because these are some of the skill sets which are going to provide millions of jobs in the future. Next is Internet of Things. What's happened again as an example of COVID, thankfully, or whatever you call it, is the fact that people have to respond. So if you remember the 4 phases: react, respond. In the terms of response time, what organizations have understood, what businesses have understood, what colleges and institutions have understood, what the whole economic government has understood, is the importance of having a digital mode of work, which again translates into how is IoT going to shape up our future. Cloud computing, storage spaces in the cloud is not uncommon anymore. Anybody who aspires to be in the area of cloud is perhaps thinking the right way, and should continue to do so. Cybersecurity, I've emphasized the whole aspect of when people are in office, there obviously are a lot of security protocols of data that does not go out of office, of financial information. We work, for example, a lot of times with banks. There are a lot of credit cards that get processed. So is it safe if I am working from home and processing those transactions? The answer is no. So what's happened is the organizations will have to start investing very, very heavily in cybersecurity, in trying to see that even if, let's say, Bhavesh works from home and works on important financial critical sensitive information, how is it that we control what he sees in his laptop or what he transfers out of his laptop? For example, all of us obviously have uh, laptops that are disabled with USB and stuff like that. So cybersecurity also helps a lot in terms of how can I control my data, how can I ensure that things are safe in a secure environment, so that it allows our clients to have that confidence in us and continuing to do what we've been doing. Oh, data analytics, and I heard our chairman, Mr. Rishad Premji, talk a lot about data, and I love when he says that, you know what, if you torture your data enough, it'll confess to everything, and it only means that, you know what, the world is around data, and unless we start looking at data to derive information out of it, we will not do anything. Without analytics, without statistics, a lot of things that we have spoken about is of no meaning. So anybody who aspires to be in the field of data analytics, data visualization, I think this is the time for you to just go full hog, and that's one technology that's going to be extremely critical for times to come. Last but not the least is digital. So digital is again, in the way we look, in the way we feel, in the way we do things. Digital is about being able to, let's say, sell a Mercedes Benz sitting out of home without even me having to go to a showroom. I can do a test drive sitting at home thanks to VR AR. I can have a complete touch, feel, uh, imagination by giving a view of what the digital capabilities of that organization is. So digital is nothing but looking at how can an experience be curated for a consumer to be able to take a product without even having to see that in person. Right, so these are some of the skills that I feel are going to be extremely critical, something that if any of you are planning to do, you should completely get hooked on. Having said this, doesn't mean that anything which is not there, and if I want to do, let's say, HR is not here, does HR become important? The answer is obviously yes. This is more from a technology perspective, and what are the 9 technologies that I feel personally are going to be the ones that will have millions of jobs, and something that people should latch on to, right? So there are a lot of skills that obviously we spoke about, and what is it that we need to be employable, and that becomes the most important aspect. That while there is a lot of saying that, you know what, do this, do that, but is there anything specific that we can do? uh, I am not going to take much time, or give you 5 or 6 or 7 specific skill sets. I know that there have been a lot of other speakers who've come and who would have told you about various skills that you need to do, which is read this, read that, get this certification, get that certification, all of that. So I don't want to repeat myself. What I'll say is that there is only one skill that I feel is going to become the most critical in times. It's nothing but the ability to or the desire, ability, and learn the whole aspect of let's say learning a new technology, being able to unlearn it and relearn it. We at times become very stringent, let's say. And if you were to ask me, let's say when I started HR 16 years ago, I did have an opportunity 4 years down the line, which is 12 years ago, when one of my business leaders had approached me and told me that, do you know what? Do you want to move to technology? Why do you want to continue doing HR? I mean, I've seen your uh, attention span. I've seen what you can do in terms of reading, and I see that you have a liking to technology. Do you want to actually build in that concept and join my team? The answer to that was a blunt no. And I said, I cannot imagine myself being outside of the realm of HR. I love what I do because that's the only thing that I know. I can't do technology. Has times changed? The answer is yes. I mean, if this was not 16 years ago and this was now, had I said this, I would have been perhaps somebody who did not have a learnability quotient, which only means that people who are stuck up on a particular skill set or a particular technology or a particular role are going to be the ones who will struggle in future. The kind of people that the job market needs, the kind of people that organizations are looking for, the kind of people that startups are looking for, the kind of people that the whole economic setup is looking for are people who change with the changing technology. If I start doing Java, tomorrow, let's say Java becomes obsolete. Do I continue to become obsolete, or will I pick up new skills and say, you know what, that's okay. Let me pick up something else which is in vogue right now. That's learnability. So learnability is not being able to stick to a particular domain, but being open to anything and everything that is required in a job landscape. So if I start with, let's say, as I said, a particular skill set, and that skill set over a point in time becomes redundant and can be taken over by AI. The robots start doing the coding part of it. So what else is the ability? A lot of us will say, you know what, I'm sorry, but I have spent 5 years of my life learning Java. There is nothing else that I can do. I am already, let's say, 25, 30. I cannot learn at this olden age. So that is not going to work out. What's going to work out is the ability to be able to transform yourself, the ability to be able to jump boats, the ability to be able to change with time and be adaptable. So all of this put together is learnability. I think this is one skill that all of us need to imbibe. And in plain words, it is just about the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. There is this nice website, and I think whenever you guys get some break or free time during the course of the day or maybe during the weekend, this small test which is in the learnabilityquotient.com. So you guys can maybe take down that .com. You can log in through your mobile as well, answer a few questions, and you'll be able to get a report which will call out what kind of learnability quotient do you have, and that will actually open up your minds with respect to trying to see which is the aspect that you have and which is the aspect that you would want to grow in times to come. So you can do this, let's say, every month after you've realized that there are few things that you're missing. You add that into your skill set and answer honestly those answers. In the next month, you will see a change there as well. So I think this is a brilliant website, and I think all of you should make use of that to try and see what your learnability quotient is. Right. This is my final slide, and, and I thought I'll leave you with some messages. And some messages are again not from a perspective of being able to land the job, because there is much more to life than just landing a job. It's about how can you succeed overall as a human being. How can you be the person who you always have wanted to be? How can you add value to the society, add value to people around you, and whatnot? So my first lesson to all of you will be to not focus on being the best. And this is the first, again, this goes back to the first slide wherein I said that innovation has now changed to disruption, which means it's no longer important whether I'm the best or not. Because a lot of people have been the best. I mean, if I am the class monitor, if I come first in class, a lot of people have come first in class in the past. What will differentiate me is the fact that if I am the first one to do something new, right? We all know who's the first person to land on the moon. Unfortunately, we don't remember the second person to land on the moon. So so it's not a rat race. It's not about being who the best is. It's only about being who the first is. So think differently. Don't try to always go behind the normal rigmarole of what everybody's done. Let me do that as well, right? Try and think of ways which are newer. And if you go back to the thoughts that I shared in the disruptive technologies and the organizations, you will know that every organization that I spoke about were the first one to think. And I will go back to that slide perhaps for you to bring it back. Yeah. So if you look at this, these are the world's best disruptive technologies, right? And all of them have not been the best. They obviously are the best now, but when they started, they were not the best. When they started, they were the first to think on that lines. They were the first to change the whole way of thinking and make money out of it. So think differently. Try to be somebody who's the first in doing something and not focus on just being the best. Being the best is okay, but being the first is much more important. The second is, again, from a millennial perspective, I think all of you are much more aware of it, and the whole aspect of marrying an organization, right? In For my parents, for example, and all your parents as well, I think it was like I joined an organization, I worked there for 30, 35, 40 years, and then I resigned from there, whether I like it or not. I mean, obviously there are a lot of our parents who love what they do, who, for example, let's say if they've stayed with an, but there also are examples of people who have not moved after an organization for 35, 40 years of their life because they didn't want to explore, because they were scared of exploring. So all I'm trying to say here is, do not marry an organization. So which does not mean that you should not stick to an organization for long. Definitely you should. If you think that you've joined an organization, or if you've joined a startup, or if you've started your own startup which actually gives you purpose in life, and something that you wake up to wanting to do, then continue staying. There's no point, and you may not understand this right now, but when you get into an organization setup, you'll know that a lot of us go to our offices and start clipping, you know what, this place is not so good, my manager is not great, the company does not pay much. That the first question that I ask to any one of them is, why are you here? If you are not happy, then what is the point of being here? So all I'm trying to say in this particular aspect is, uh, try to be with an organization, or try to be with a cause that actually gives meaning to your life. Because if you do so, it'll help you do more, it'll help you be productive. At the end of the day, it'll make you very, very happy in terms of what you're doing. And at the end of the day, it's important to you for you to be happy to be productive, because without happiness you cannot be productive. The third is on worrying about failures, and I think that's where a lot of big organizations have failed. And when I say they have failed, they failed because they didn't want to try something new. A classic example can be given of Kodak. Kodak, if you remember, was the number one uh, technology that we had at that point in time, right? There was digital that was coming into play. There was a scope for Kodak to change its ways, but Kodak felt that, you know what, they are the best in class and they don't want to change, so they never tried. And what they never tried is what happened. Nokia is another example. Nokia was one phone that we can't take out of our minds. I mean, when the boom in terms of cell phones, smartphones happened in India, all of us had Nokia. But where is Nokia right now? While obviously it's trying to create a new purpose, a new brand, and starting all of that, Nokia did not take chances, and that's why they failed. So I think what's important is for us to fail. Unless you fail, you will not be able to take risks. You'll not be able to do things, and do not worry about failing. I mean, people, imagine if somebody, Neil Armstrong, for example, would have worried about failing, we would have never known how it is to land on the moon, and stuff like that. Uh, the fourth aspect is trust. While obviously your academics, your scores, your technological bent of mind, your ability to learn and unlearn and relearn, all of that is going to be important. What's going to be, and when I say trust factor, I mean trusting your manager, trusting your organization, trusting your colleagues, trusting your people around you. And there's been a very famous adage that's going around, which Tom Friedman, a renowned columnist, had said a couple of months ago. He said that trust is going to be the only legal performance enhancing drug. So if there is only one drug that you want to imbibe, take that drug of trust. Start trusting people around you, and that's going to be important. Will there be challenges when somebody mistrusts you? The answer is yes. But having said this, it's important for all of us to start trusting, because teamwork is going to be extremely critical. None of us are going to be successful if we continue to be the best. Whereas when it comes to teamwork, I can't. Virat Kohli, for example, and a lot of you, I'm sure, are cricket fans, and we've been trying to think, how does RCB never come close to winning an IPL trophy? They have the best people on board. What I somehow think is that there is lack of trust, there is lack of teamwork, and because the set of superstars don't come together as a cohesive unit is why they don't win. And there are classic examples of the other teams who perhaps do not have such big stars, but the fact that they can work together as a cohesive unit is what makes them successful, right? And the last but not the least is again going back to the learnability aspect, and Azim Premji, somebody that I've been very fortunate to listen and hear, and I keep following, is that man at the age of 78 also talks about learning. He says that, you know what, every day I look around the world, I look around everybody, and I learn 3 or 4 new things. So there is no age to learning. You should continue learning, you should continue doing, you should continue reading, you should continue imbibing whatever you see around you, and moving on. So with this, I'll kind of pause for the time being, and I am done from a presentation perspective, and would love to hear some questions or some thoughts, or anything that you have to share.
Yes, students, you can ask any questions if you have.
Do we still have 80 people, or people have run away?
89, sir.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Yes, students, do you have any questions? If you can even type your question in chat box. So they're asking that after BCA, what they should pursue, like MCA, or they should go ahead with a specialization course.
So again, depends. It depends on what you want to do. So if you want to have a engineering degree, obviously you should go for MCA. But if you think that you want to look at any of the technologies that I spoke about, I think that's also a good way of looking at it. What's important is for you to understand what gives you pleasure, what is the focus that you have in life, what is the career that you want to imbibe. And I think the way to look at it is perhaps look around people, try and pick up 4 or 5 mentors in your life, and that's extremely critical. So pick up 4 or 5 mentors, understand from them what's going to be important, and they will be able to understand you better, and then guide you of what works better for you. But yeah, but if you were to, let's say, pick up any skill sets that I spoke about in terms of specialization, I think that's going to be the key. And I will just go back to that slide. Yeah. So if you think that you like any of these technologies, I think this is the future. And if any of you are going to pick up any one of them, and I'm not saying that you need to be an expert in everything, but if you focus your energies towards any one of the specialization, there is definitely a great scope for you there. Right? But most importantly, please pick up 5 or 6 mentors who have done well in the technology industry. Interact with them on LinkedIn, and understand from them what you should do, rather than just having one perspective. Because it's important that I want to do a lot of things, but am I capable of doing those things? Maybe yes, maybe no. I am best at HR, and that's why I do HR. So I think it's important for you to first understand what are you good at, and then take up a role, a coaching or a certification around those lines. Right?
Okay, sir. Okay. So I think, yes, sir, we are done with the questions, sir.
Okay, great. Just one aspect. when I got the invitation to join it, I obviously logged into LinkedIn as well to try and see how many students are there and all of that. But I surprisingly found that there are very few of you who are on LinkedIn. So I think that's becomes extremely critical. The fact that you guys are going to join an organizational setup in times to come, it's important for you to start spending some time on LinkedIn also. I know all of you spend a lot of time on Facebook, on Snapchat. I don't even know which are the new technologies now, on Telegram, Instagram, and whatnot. But I think it's equally important for you to spend some time of your day on LinkedIn, trying to read articles, trying to see what technology is, trying to understand which is the scope, maybe adding or chatting up with a few mentors who are seniors in their respective areas, and that's important. So I was a little taken aback when I saw very few people amongst you who were on LinkedIn. So that's important, and that's one message that I want you to leave with.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, they are new to the college. So, as a part of the orientation program, we are going to ask them to create all their profiles. So, we need to guide them. Sir. Thank you,
That's
sir, for
wonderful.
your suggestion.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully you guys did learn something. Connect with me separately in case if you need anything. Thanks, and have a good day.
Yes, sir. Sir, I would like to take this opportunity to thank today's speaker, Patel sir, for sparing his valuable time and knowledge with us. I also like to thank all the students for having a patient learning. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.